Hello, I'm Christy from Just Peoples. Today I'm speaking with 4 of our project leaders who have been on the front line throughout the COVID pandemic, serving their communities. I've got Hong in Vietnam, who works with a community of single mothers who have been stigmatized and often ousted from their families and villages, and Hong works with them to rebuild their lives. She provides counselling, business support, shelter, everything that they need to be able to look after themselves and their children without returning to violent and abusive ex-partners. We've also got Robert in Uganda, who works with children who have been orphaned by HIV or who otherwise don't have access to education and opportunities to build their lives outside of poverty. So he's been working with them throughout the pandemic to make sure that their families have enough food and also that they're able to continue their education. Then we've got Bushra and Mushfiq in Bangladesh, who are inventors, and they usually create technological solutions to localized poverty. And in this case, they've been providing full face respirators to serve doctors in COVID hospitals who wouldn't be able to work without their services. So each of our project leaders have been doing incredible work throughout the pandemic. And this conversation was intended to have them share the realities of going through a pandemic in developing countries and also their solutions to those problems, but actually being on the front line as they are and being role models in their community and responsible for solving problems even before the pandemic. Their level of responsibility has shot up over the last 18 months. And they have seen so much death and devastation to their communities, including a lot of personal losses of relatives. And so where the conversation actually went to was how they managed to keep hope and their own sort of personal and even spiritual journey to get the strength to not only stay strong themselves, but to be able to continue serving their community and inspire their communities to keep going when they're faced with what seems like hopeless situations. So yes, like the pandemic itself, our conversation took unexpected turns, but ultimately each of these project leaders have so much to offer their communities and to offer us as human beings in terms of how we can also find the inner strength as well as the practical solutions needed to tackle unexpected and unimaginable challenges. So enjoy the journey. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this talk today. It's a wonderful opportunity to share what is happening in my community. About 14 days ago, that's when we started experiencing a second wave of COVID-19 in Uganda. And this time it is really a serious wave whereby it is sweeping each and everything. So it doesn't leave the rich, it doesn't leave the poor. So it doesn't know if you have the money or you don't have. And what happens where we are right now, for example, me, I'm a patient of COVID. I've been in that for the last 3 weeks with my family, my wife, and other colleagues. About 5 of them have been down, but good enough that we are recovering. But this is a scenario whereby you get a COVID, you become a patient of COVID, but you have responsibilities. Like I have children I have to take care of. I have a center that are with children who are orphaned. They have nowhere to go. I'm the father, I'm the mother, you know, I'm the breadwinner. So I'm already on the ground and you get sick and the next thing you have is a call, you know, we don't have food, we don't have something to eat. Even the community, the people that you are trying to help in the community, they're also relying on you, they are calling you. Ebo, we need food. As they're calling you in that kind of circumstances, and a call from a relative, you get another call that, Ebo, what? We have lost ABCD. And you are like, you are traumatized in that moment. You even take a breath. You're like, am I going to survive? Imagining you're sick, they're calling you, somebody's dying. You're sick, they're calling you, children don't have food. You're sick, there are so many things. And yet, you are the brain winner, you are down, you can't access medicine. Because right now, when you go to the hospitals, people are charging a lot of money exorbitantly, in that you can't even afford to get the simplest kind of medicine that you can get in the clinic. Because right now it is totally very expensive. When it comes to oxygen, it is hell. You can't get oxygen. But what you do is just wake up in the morning, do what you can be able to do. The situation is hard, because I really thought I was going to die, because I was seeing my friends down, my wife down, but I have a baby. Imagine that situation. You are covering yourself. You feel you want to get warmth, you want to gain energy, and your baby is crying. She wants to get something. You are like, you're traumatized. What do I do? People are dying not because of only COVID-19, okay? But they're dying a combination of so many things. One, lack of medicine, because in government hospitals, there is no medicine, but these are hospitals that are totally full now. You can't even get a bed where we have resumed now to home care. Secondly, people are dying of hunger. Now, people also are dying of stress and trauma. People, we have developed this sense whereby people think that the moment you get COVID, you are totally gone. So what are we trying to do now? We are trying to help people that if you get COVID, the thing is that you can still stay alive. So we are trying to help them that you have to stay strong. So basically, it is really a lot that I can say, but because of time, I just leave it there so that we can have a discussion.
I would like to add on one thing that Robert says about people die not only due to the COVID that they are positive with. There's so many things that may end someone's life. For example, in my community, they are women who've been traumatized with domestic violence, with husband who betrays them and have betrayed outside, with a lot of financial issues, and with the social stigma, society stigma against James, and all of that is already traumas in their hearts, and they've been wanting to kill themselves many times. So the COVID adds on more reason for them to end up their lives.
Bushra and Mushfiqat, do you guys want to?
Yeah, I think one thing that Robert said, we also sort of relate very well with it, is that it's not just the disease that's killing people, it's also their will to live. So that's many things. For us in Bangladesh, it's not easy for us to just stop working, because majority of our people, they either work in like garments or like clothing factories. They work on driving rickshaws. So, and everything's like human done. So that means that they need to go out and do this work. And I was reading this news just yesterday that this father committed suicide because he couldn't provide enough food for his kids. And this has become normal for us right now. Like, if we are seeing this news so much that if we see it on the news anymore, it's not even like the headlines of the news. Now it's like the third, fourth page of newspapers, because it has become so common during the last 1.5 years. And one thing that we have seen is that there needs to be something that drives that hope, because if you go to the hospitals here as well, you'll be, right now, if you go to any hospital, you'll be turned away because we don't have enough ICU beds. And that's the reality of it. It's because everything is filled. Even though we have oxygen, but it's so expensive right now that anyone from a middle income to a low income family cannot afford it. And if you want to talk about any other aspects of healthcare, that's just simply not available. And the worst thing that we have seen from our end is that if you look at the hospitals in Bangladesh, like the doctors at some point, like so many doctors started dying that everyone got scared, because the doctors also need a lot of equipment and a lot of stuff to help the patients. And a lot of this, like what we saw is that these doctors were, some of them were given fake PPE. Some of them still continued on to their duty, but the reality was that a lot of them couldn't because a lot of them died. And a lot of them had to turn patients away because they had nothing, they didn't have a better option. Like our entire motto in this entire thing was anything that we can do to help the situation. Even if it's helping one person reach to that hospital, or even if it's one person, you know, that gets that will to survive, or that gets that will to treat a patient. I think that's the most we can offer in a situation like this. And that's the best we can do going forward. That it's just keeping a bit of the hope alive so that people have something to live for.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Things have really shifted, haven't they? Like I remember a year ago when we were talking about, you know, how to get food or how to get medical care, but now it's almost like there is no food, there is no medical care, like people can't work. So it's like, how do we give people the will to live? Like all three of you we're talking about people sort of giving up, being like the situation sort of seems hopeless, like they've been trying for so long.
I have a member in my community, single mom, she killed herself because in Vietnam, when someone dies, we're gonna give, you know, money to support with what is that?
Burial.
Yeah, couriers and sort of that. But she's hung down in the river, so, and she get the letter, and hopefully on that her kid can spend all the money that relatives sent her.
Just to clarify, for those who are not familiar with burial practices in Vietnam, Hong is explaining that because it's traditional for families to pay for burial costs, this particular woman that she's talking about chose to throw herself in the river so that her family wouldn't have to pay for a burial. And she left a note for the family saying, please give the money that you would allocate to my burial to my children. And the story is important because it highlights the kind of mindset that people have got to, where they have no food and no way to earn money and no other hope. So she believed that the best way that she could support her children was to make this sacrifice. So with everyone, like all of you guys are community leaders, and long before the pandemic started, you've been leaders in your community, like solving local problems, creating development projects, creating opportunities for people to live better lives. And you've had to pivot, you know, you've had to sort of change track a little bit to be able to meet these emerging needs. But when because your communities rely on you, because you've always been problem solvers and you're solving problems even now, but like when the need gets so great and it goes to a level of sort of existential crisis, like I've tried everything, there's nothing I can do, to the point where you think killing yourself to get money from the relatives for your children is the best you can do for your family. Like that is so utterly heartbreaking. Like it's next level, the stories you guys are saying. But amidst all of this pain and kind of like bleakness where there's no clear way out, how do you keep going? Like how do you stay positive? How do you encourage your communities when it seems like there's no clear solution this time?
Being with friends in different countries is something that is really very important. And I've seen that it is something that is really helping a lot. For example, like during this situation, like I am today, if it wasn't this call, I think I would be like, you guys, I'm giving up on some things. But when you get such a situation and you share it with others, they give you a way and you remain with hope. Me, I believe I don't stay with the situation myself to see how I handle it. I share it with other colleagues and they give me ways on how I can survive. Let me give you a scenario. One time, I think it was 2 years back, I reached a time whereby I was supposed to solve some things in the community. I had no money at all. my landlord almost was like, can you get out of the house? So I was inside the house and I was like, what do I do? I almost committed suicide. But nevertheless, I called one of the friends and was like, you guys, can I tell you something? The situation I'm facing is really very traumatizing. What do I do? Because the landlord wants to take me outside and the community is calling me here and there. So when I shared that story with my colleague, who was like, no, Ebo, just wait, let me call you a minute. So I was like, okay, maybe something is going to come. I remained for about 5 minutes. They called me and they were like, no, Ebo, let's do ABCD. We got the solution by just sharing with other colleagues. And, my heart was, it came back to normal. And I was like, no, never, never, never hide or in isolation. Share issues with your colleagues. You will always have a solution.
Well, that's something practical that anyone around the world can relate to. Like when you're really suffering with a problem that seems impossible to solve, going and talking to other people, sharing the burden can give you different angles of seeing it and renewed hope. So I'm glad that this is possible for you here too.
Very, very, very possible. Because when you look at the scenario, it's now a week. Right now, I've lost a relative right today. A week back, I lost one. And he even called me and was like, Ebo, I'm now in the hospital. But now I have 8 children. They're all young. How do I leave my children? When, when you hear such stories, you're like, I have a kid. I have other children, that I'm taking care of. Now, if I go away today, what happens? That's where I'm like, no, there is maybe a friend called Christy. Can I talk to Christy? There's this scenario. How do I solve it? How do I handle this situation of the children who don't have food? And always Christy will give you a solution, even if it's not like, sometimes we think it should be in terms of money. But money, I believe, doesn't solve everything in life. It just quickens some things on, how you handle some things. But just a mere talk to somebody and like, you do ABCD, it can solve something that would have been, you would have used a lot of money, to solve that. When people are in hospitals, they are basically isolated. This issue of isolation from your relatives, when you get COVID, it is something that is really killing people.
Mm.
A person is like, he has nobody to talk to. And you can't see your relatives. You can't see anybody. But me, when I became sick, unfortunately, even my wife was sick. We only had our baby. And I was like, no, I can't put my baby away. Whatever comes, let it come. If I die, let me die once with my baby. So I was like, I have to hold my baby in whatever circumstance they are. So sometimes I could feel very sick and I'm like, where's my baby? I have to see my baby. Then I gain more hope because I see my baby is okay.
For my situation is, it is a little bit different because I have a big community of the single mom. We've been sisters for many years. I have like 1,000 sisters that can come anytime. And we already created the community for them to share. So they have not relative, but they have other single mom as a sister to share everything in their life for a very long time already. However, my situation that I found very, very interesting that I want to share with you guys. I'm a very professional worker that I work for big NGOs and big corporations before. So I always want to do everything professionally. It means if I run an organization, I need to hire people who speak fluent English, who have master degree in development, who have been studying in New Zealand or Australia, so all of that as staff. So those are staff who worked with me before. I had single mom as sisters, but I always look at them as beneficiary, like all younger sisters that I had to take care of them. Unluckily, the pandemic came. I had no money to pay staff because if you want to hire professional staff, you have to pay, and you have to pay a lot of money, right? And I myself have a lot of childhood trauma that suddenly, due to some circumstance, I need to do therapies, and I be so down. And at that point of time, the single mom in my community come and offer help. And I said, at first I said, you don't even have university degrees. You don't even have ability to use internet and computer. How can you do all of that projects? At first I said, oh, my life was terrible. It's now I don't even have any people who speak English to have to work with me. And then I heard some voice that, yeah, it is a kind of offer that you have now, so you have to take. And then I take on all the single mom who don't know how to work on a Google search to put on information about how much money they send, how many people they support, all of that in the team. And amazingly, they do an amazing job. Why? They have the sympathy for the beneficiary that I'm supporting. They are in the same shoes with it. So they understand that we, on the other, very professional, very high quality, high qualified, high educated person that I paid a lot of money to work for me before can never understand. So yeah, you know, you can find support anywhere as long as you open to receive the help that God or the universe or something send you when you really need it.
Oh, that's beautiful, Hong. What an interesting story, because, you know, we're always taught that, oh, you need to go with the most educated or the most qualified person. But actually, in this case, it's the person who has that shared experience, who really understands the people that you're supporting. Bushra and Mushrika, how do you guys carry on?
Yeah, I think, so like picking up two things from like Robert and Tong, like, so one of the things that they said, Robert initially said, is that we initially find help in people around us. Both me and Bushra, we also went through the entire COVID phase ourselves as well. So we knew what it felt to be like patients. We knew how much support you can get when you yourself get COVID. And like that experience itself was sort of phenomenal in a way, that that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of knowing that there is no fixed cure or medication or anything else that can really help you. You just sort of completely depend on hope. And actually, like last year, what happened is that I spent like almost 2 weeks in the hospital when my grandfather died. And I was there and serving with him, like across him all the time. The first day that I went in the hospital in the morning, 3 people died in front of my eyes. And that's very hard to watch, because I was just standing there, and this person who was just alive a second ago, this old lady, she just went limp. Where my grandfather was sort of on the hospital bed, this person was just right on the next bed. And it's just this entirely big room where there's just a lot of beds. There are no curtains, no dividers, nothing. So being in that place, and while I was in that hospital for like a week or a little bit more than that, I saw almost 50 to 55 people like die in front of my eyes. And that's too much to handle. Like you really can't imagine like what that does to you, because you see their relatives waiting outside, and we used to wait outside sometimes with them, share our food, talk to them. And then when we are going inside, we know we're facing the same circumstance. And we know there's all sorts of people who are going into this hospital, and there's really nothing else to do. You're just waiting in line to see people die. And even the patients, like when they're seeing these people in front of them, they completely lose hope. They don't know what to do. And I remember, like, my grandfather was a very, very strong person. So he never really, he was very playful, very friendly. So, and I know that he closed his eyes up. He was trying to look the other way. And even at times when he was like having his food or trying to eat his food, because it was very hard for him, even during those times, like there were people dying in front of him. So he didn't know what to do. He didn't want me to feel bad. And it's just this entire circle that was going on. And my family is still recovering, and we have lost not one, I think around 5 to 6 people. And it's the same for Bushra's end as well. Yeah. Like they survived COVID too. And that's why I do the work I do. That's my motivation behind it. And that's what keeps me going, because there are hundreds and thousands of people like my grandfather who's in overcrowded hospitals, seeing other people die, losing all hope, and dying themselves. And this is a scenario that's repeating across Bangladesh. And that's what I want to help with. Like being an engineer or a change maker of some sort, that's what I really care about, is that if there's no point if I sit down and mourn for a very long time. Because in the time that I do that, there could be maybe 100 people that I could help.
There were 4 people who also died in our family as well, including over the past 1 year. So including 2 grandparents and then 1 uncle and an aunt, and they were very close. I grew up watching them, and like Mushfiq's grandfather was one of those lucky people who actually had the opportunity to even get admitted to a hospital. None of my relatives at that moment even had the opportunity or even had the chance to get into a hospital. So it's actually that bad, and it's all 4 of them. So, when I think about it, everyone, I think like literally every family in Bangladesh right now is facing a scenario like that, where either they're having to not, just like barely get into some kind of a hospital and pay a very thick amount of money to avail absolutely minimal or very bad quality service, or not get into a hospital at all. But something that came out of this was that I think throughout our community, there's been a movement where even if it's for your own family or even if it's for your friends, people have been very open to help each other. So since we're talking about, what gives us hope, that there's an entire movement within our community, and, people like us, where we're trying to distribute, improvised PPE to help people. We've been in communication, and there's been this, like, the birth of an entirely new community where it's not people who are just there for the sake of being there, but it's people who are strong-willed and willing to help, and willing to help you out, even if you are not a relative, even if you are not family. For example, we've been needing a lot of plasma from recovered patients, and there's been Facebook group that's been created with thousands of people getting added over maybe just a fortnight. And people have been coming forward, patients who have recovered from COVID, to donate plasma, and it's been very, very helpful. And then in groups where there's, people who are actually helping to distribute PPE in hospitals, they've been more than accommodating with anything that's been absolutely, within their capacity, because now we're short of transport. So even if we have PPE, it's getting very difficult to get them to the doctors or get them to the hospitals. But then there's been people who have been stepping up, just coming forth, like, I have some kind of service or something like that, I can just get it across. That's what kind of makes me still see it in a positive light, because I know that even if, we're facing so much death, there are people who are changing from the inside because of this, because of the, experience that we're having, even though it's a very traumatic experience, even though it's very negative, but it's kind of changing these very people in the community into, change makers, and into real life, sometimes heroes, sometimes, just people who are taking a lot of good initiatives.
Thank you, Bushra, and I'm so sorry for your personal loss. I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't think I could get myself together there, and here I am. I'm going to cry again, but this is I'm just so sorry that you guys have been so personally affected. And it's crazy, like in Western countries mostly, you see people debating about whether or not they should wear a mask, and people are like,
or not they should take the vaccine. Why we don't know where the vaccine going to come.
How dare you make me wear a mask? I'm not going to wear a mask. This sort of thing. That's the issue. Do you know what I mean? These are my rights. How dare you make me cover my face? And it's like, that is not the issue. It's incredible, all of the things that you guys are saying. And, in certain places you've talked about kind of people that are profiting from it. Abel, you talked about how it's so expensive just to buy paracetamol because people have hiked up the prices and they're profiting from people's misery, this sort of thing, which is terrible. But then it's wonderful to hear, Bushra, how people are actually cooperating, and how there's so many people that are turning into change makers. So it's not just the misery and death and, exploitation and governments taking it all, it's not all misery. Like, if it turns people into seeing how they can contribute to the world and taking action on that, like, that's a really beautiful thing to come out of this. disaster. And on that note, like, I'd love to hear you guys talk about the tangible difference that you've been making in your community. Like, I know all of you have been on the front line and you've been using your brains and your experience and your resources to do everything you can to make a difference. So would you like to talk about the tangible difference that you've been able to make, how you guys with your organizations have been able to make improvements, and then also how we can help?
For me, in response for the COVID, yeah, like I shared before, that we have a community with the single mom. We start up an emergency COVID-19 response support to support on the single mom with funding from just people. At the beginnings, at that time, we used the fund to send single mother $500,000 each to buy food. My community have, how much I have? 993 members. 1/3 of them are donors and 2/3 of them are the beneficiaries that waiting to have support somehow. However, that like I was shared with you before that we don't even have money to support each others, and we've been trying to ship food and vegetables and fruits and all of that all around the country to support our members. However, right now, even that thing is not possible to do due to the very heavy lockdown in my community. Before, I separate the Confidence with the single mother community. The Confidence is an organization going to hire professional staff to do professional things and support the single moms. Now, I did not make like the decision yet, but I see a very beautiful path for the future that the single mom can become the leader, can become the managers. Because in the last 3 months, without me involved, on the project's been running so well. It even much better than before because they add a lot of emotion, they add a lot of caring, they add a lot of beautiful things from their heart to the work that they do. So I think I'm changing a lot in terms of looking at the workers that can be my partners, and for the organization's manager, and I can somehow merge the two things into together. That is a big change in me and in the organization as well. It's also like you to share that there's many people became chain maker, there's many people became heroes. That is also happening in my community. I am not a fundraising person. I'm actually an entrepreneur. I want to do sustainable things, business things that support and sustainable.
The system that you set up for the cash transfers was absolutely beautiful, because we gave you a grant of about $1,000 or something, and then it became self-sustainable because the women who received the grants, when they got back on their feet, they started then donating to the next woman again. It was the most beautiful thing, and the fact that it's still sustainable and that people are still contributing to other women it's an incredible impact that you did by setting that up for them.
When the lockdown was lifted, the first lockdown, people helped us to make sure that people learn how to make soap, because soap is very essential now. If you don't wash your hands, if you don't wear a mask, that means you're not preventing yourself from COVID. So we've helped those people to make soap, especially people from the island. We have even worked with volunteers to make sure that they can be able to get water. We have installed water pumps there, so that they can be able to have enough water to wash their hands. A combination of soap and water. Now you're good to go. We've been helping them, make pads, girls to survive during this period of the pandemic, because right now you'll find that some things are very expensive and they can't get them. Helping the communities to get food, my center, even other communities that I'm helping, especially those with single mothers. We are now going into a food relief project right now, that we are going to buy food and send it to those people directly, so that they can have food to eat, and they will reduce on the impacts of people dying of hunger and children. But besides that, there's also health. The moment those people call me and they're like, this child is feeling this lady is feeling this, I always tell them, please go to the clinic so that they can find out, do you have malaria? Do you have, because anyway, that clinic does not test for COVID. And the other thing that we're even fearing to test COVID, because the moment people understand that they have COVID, they get serious fear. They know that they are going to die. So we encourage people, even the people in the clinic, they don't tell them that they have COVID. They instead tell us so that we can be able to encourage them and tell them what to do. So I tell the doctor, please don't tell them that they have COVID, but just tell them they have fever so that we treat them so that they don't get to know that they have COVID, so that they can take that medication knowing that they're going to get well. For example, things like malaria. Here, malaria is normal. Every person knows that the moment I have malaria, I'll be fine. I'll take medicine and get fine. So I'm using that kind of approach so that they don't tell those people that have a number of children, people that are having a number of problems, issues. You don't tell them that you have malaria, but I tell them, you don't have COVID. I tell them, please, even the doctors, I tell them you have malaria or you have fever, but you'll be fine. We are going to give you medicine and you'll be fine. So they take the medicine that they give them, and then we combine it with the local, what we call it, the local concoction. We have a lot of herbs that we get from the trees, from different gardens, and then they combine them together, they boil, they steam themselves, So I guide them on how to do it, like how I survived.
Hello again. Just to clarify one point about what Robert's saying about malaria. He knows that people need to be social distancing, but in his community that's so overcrowded, social distancing is almost impossible. And when people have malaria, they lie down and they stay isolated in their room for the duration. So it's actually, as much social distancing as people are able to do. And while he would like to be able to, have them treated at the hospital and give them medicine that's going to relieve their symptoms, he explained also that the prices have been hiked up. And so medicine is unaffordable and hospitals are overwhelmed. So actually that sort of treatment is not available. And because of the level of misinformation in Uganda, where people hear that if you get COVID, you die, and that stress, considering they have so many children to look after, compounds, and it makes it much more difficult for them to recover from COVID. So Robert, without any other options, he does what he can for them, which is to give them as much peace of mind as possible so that their body has the best chance of recovering from COVID.
We have created another platform online whereby in case a person doesn't have food, a person has stress, a person has any problem, we do now therapy online. So we help them to do that therapy so that the person doesn't get traumatized, so that the person will know that he or she will survive.
Yeah, the fear around COVID is a real thing. I mean, I had COVID, yes. And because you hear so many stories and you don't know exactly what it is, I'm asthmatic, so I was like, maybe I'll lose a lung, do you know what I mean? Like you just, because you hear so many stories, you just don't know what COVID is. And so when you get it, it is scary. And I had access to all the medical care, anything that I needed, I could have got if I had needed it. So, without that safety net and with all that fear and misinformation, it must be, and then having 8 kids to think about, it must be absolutely terrifying.
But even to thank you, Christy, I remember when I talked to you, that is a strategy. Like I told you, I talked to friends. When we talked about last time when I was talking about food relief, you told me you had COVID and it took you like about 1 month to heal. And I was like, oh, okay. If Christy got COVID and she got healed within a month, that means I can be also fine. So when I've been getting all these other side effects of COVID, I was like, no. Chris told me she took 1 month. So I could stick on that and could gain my energy and still continue working.
And it seems like a theme that's come up in this chat, how people have used their own experiences of pain to then help other people, like particularly in the single mother community, how they were better than the professionals because of that, because of that personal experience. And I feel like, you're your story with your grandfather Mushfiq, which was absolutely heartbreaking, and I feel like maybe trauma therapy could be on the cards after witnessing 50 people die in the hospital. Like that's terrible, but like I just, it's incredible that motivates you to do more.
Our entire COVID journey has been with Just Peoples, because like without Just Peoples, I don't think like our COVID response even exists. I remember being actually in a call with you guys, both you and Joe, and with Just Peoples, and it was the middle of the night in Dhaka. It was like 3:30 or 4 in the morning here, and I remember we were talking about how to get some COVID help out there to to make a difference. And back then we just had like one broken 3D printer that we were trying to build things out of. We got ourselves few more 3D printers, and we started printing face shields. And that was one of the first things we did. And that was a huge impact project, because we gave out almost 3,500 to 3,600 pieces of like just face shields to like doctors who didn't have anything then. Like there were no medical supplies, there was nothing. So this was their primary access to something that they would use to help patients. We also gave some face shields to patients, emergency workers, and other emergency personnel, and like people who take samples and stuff like that. Following from that, we actually designed like our own ventilator, and then we received a bit of funding for that. And and because of that, like, so now patients were having trouble to breathe. There were not enough ventilators, and we had like, in the entire country, we had like 20 or 30 ventilators, and there was a huge crisis for ventilators. And we were there. We created like this small ambulance pack that hospitals and paramedics would carry around to save patients. So then we save patients and help patients in that front. And with your help, what we have been able to do is we came up with our PAPRs.
For those of you who haven't heard of PAPRs before, they are powered air purifying respirators, and Bushra and Mushfiq designed these, made from upcycled scuba masks. And so they are distributing them to COVID hospitals and makeshift hospitals that are out in fields because the healthcare system is so overwhelmed. And they're enabling doctors to stay completely protected from COVID. And then at the end of their shift, the PAPR gets washed, sanitized, and passed on to the next doctor, who can then stay protected while they treat more patients. So they're making an incredible impact in the lives of doctors and patients in Bangladesh.
And that's what we have been doing for some time now. And we have distributed a hefty amount of them to doctors. We have actually covered like a major chunk of hospitals inside Dhaka. So we were able to give it to like some of the main doctors, like people who go into the ICUs, who go into the OT rooms and stuff like that. And it has been absolutely phenomenal, because I just can't really explain to you or tell you unless I actually, show you my call log of like doctors calling me every second, and they're like, oh my God, do you have more of these left? Like, can we really use them? And we know of hospitals that are actually even sharing up, since there's not enough to go around. So there are hospitals where doctors are sharing the PAPRs, like while they're on duty, or they're exchanging PAPRs, and that's what's happening. Because like for a hospital of, let's say, 20 doctors, we are able to cover like 3 or 4 doctors from the PAPRs that we have had. And we just know that doctors have been calling us on and off, and some of them have just been crying on the phone. Some of them have been so happy. They've been calling us and telling us, you know what, you are helping us save lives today. According to like the numbers that we have, so we have already gotten PAPRs to, I think with like a combined effort, I think we have gotten close to around 60 PAPRs or something around that number. I think it might be a little bit larger than that. And the doctors that we have been able to help with that number is, it's around 60 doctors, and actually more, because like the doctors are sharing the PAPRs across their hospitals. But what is more important to see is that the numbers that we've received from hospitals is that these doctors from the hospitals that we are dealing with are dealing with around 7,500 patients per day. And that's the number that we are looking at right now. And that's the amount of people and patients that are being seen every day by these doctors who otherwise did not have any resources to even come to the patients, to talk to them or like to treat them somehow. And these are extremely crowded hospitals. There's no social distancing, nothing. Even the patients are kept all together in the same place. So it's just incredible to see that we are able to help close to 7,000 people on a daily basis right now with just a small intervention. And that's something that we are proud and very happy of. And that's something that we go back to every day when we go to sleep at night, that we are being able to help. We are trying to make some kind of a difference.
And what an incredible difference you are making. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your amazing work with us. Before we close, have you got any final comments that you would like to say? Anything else that you feel needs to be shared today?
I would like to say one thing, like the pandemic is come for us to learn about ourselves, to learn about our communities and the life in general. As long as you are kind and nice and want to contribute to keep the world in its beautiful ways, then you'll be blessed.
I also want to thank you all for this opportunity, because I'm now a totally different person from the person that I started with in the morning when we are starting this call. You have really changed my life now. I'm totally a different person with a different perspective now. So hearing different conversations from different people has made now my heart to at least to be somebody who is now very strong and very enthusiastic, to push on.
I just wanted to say same thing as well, that, whatever we go through, I think we go through it collectively. And I just want to say, all the Just People's leaders that we've had the opportunity to meet over the past 2 months, the wonderful monthly meeting that you guys have been arranging. So it's been amazing. So to know all of your work and to just know all of your, share our shared experiences. And I just want to say that, we're sort of in this together, in a sense that whatever you're going through, no matter how small or how big we can relate to it, we're always there. And I just, love the fact that we're always there for each other. And, for example, this was amazing to hear out, even though we're in different countries right now, but then again, we have so much to correlate with each other and just like, to sympathize and empathize with. So that's something that also makes me feel very good. And I'm just really positive and hopeful about it, what we can change as an international community. So thanks, Christy and Joe, for that.
Yeah, and I just like to add one final comment. I think that throughout this pandemic, like there has been lots of ups and downs, because we have all been going through a lot. And in Bangladesh, it doesn't feel like there is nothing outside the pandemic. Like the pandemic seems normal now, like staying at home and doing things with a mask on and like not talking to people outside. All of this seems normal. And I think through all of this, every time that we have had faced some kind of a difficulty, every time that we didn't know where to go, I think Just Peoples have been like a guardian angels for us, because we have always reached out to you, always found hope. It's not just about fundraising or something like that. It's someone we know that we have a friend to talk to. We know that someone, no matter what people are saying around us, we know that you guys are there. You'll always listen to us, and you'll always find a way to help us, support us, and that too mentally as well, because this is one of the hope that keeps our work alive. This is the hope that's keeping patients alive in Bangladesh. And yeah, thank you just for being there, watching over us.
Thank you so much, Mushfika, for your beautiful words. It's an absolute honor to be a small part in the incredible work that you all do. Thank you so much, Bushra, Mushfika, Robert and Hong, for sharing such personal stories with us today. Personally, I've had my heart broken and restored throughout this conversation. And you've ultimately left me feeling really excited about the work you're doing and the positive changes that are happening in all of your communities. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And thank you for joining us today and sharing this experience with us as the project leaders talked about their work and their personal tragedies as well as their triumphs. It's been a real journey, so thank you for being part of it. And if you would like to support Bushra, Mushfika, Hong and Robert as they continue to support their communities through the rest of their pandemic, our pandemic, then you can find a donate button at justpeoples.org/COVID. And the money will be put towards the COVID relief response that they are implementing. We'll be starting off with PAPRs for the work that Bushra and Mushfika are doing, because that's the most urgent need at this time. But as needs arise, we will use the funds to distribute where the highest emergency is at the time that we receive the money. So thank you so much for listening in. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to know more about their responses, please get in touch with me and I'd love to chat further with you. And have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Thank you.